Okay, merci. Thank you, Professor Miroir, for those kind words of introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here and to be part of this very interesting and well-regarded course. I've looked through the syllabus, and it's really a very impressive set of topics and speakers that are being offered. Let me just check, first of all, to see if people can hear me and can follow my English. Is there any problem at the back and with the filming? A bit louder? All right. I'll try to speak louder and more slowly, which is a challenge because I have prepared for you a presentation on this PowerPoint format that is very full. And I'm therefore obliged to move through it in this 1 hour that I have for the first part of our afternoon rather rapidly. Therefore, don't worry if you don't catch everything that appears on the screen, because the PowerPoint program will be, as I believe all other PowerPoints are, made available to you for later reference. And there are some details that the letters are very small perhaps in some cases. So I'm just going to give you the broad thrust of things. And then I'm very much looking forward to your remarks and your questions and observations. If during my talk there's something that was very unclear or you would like me to repeat or clarify, put up your hand and I'll do that. But let's save the questions about content and so on until later. All right. Let's begin with a couple of basics about official aid. Of course, foreign aid is about the transferring of money, and it's about goods, food aid, for example. Many of you are aware of the teachers, the consultants, the advisors, the trainers who are at work in developing countries. But there's a fourth thing that is transferred, and I wish to emphasize that, and I will come back to it in my presentation, which I feel is sometimes overlooked. It is the question of policy ideas and policy formulas that, especially in the last 30 years of foreign aid, have really been at the heart of what is transferred. And in effect, much foreign aid involves providing money to countries if and only if, and on condition of their acceptance of certain policy formulas. We'll come back to this. Now let's consider a bit of history of foreign aid and the main channels through which official aid has been sent. This graphic describes the period about almost 40 years of, almost 50 years to 2007. The three colored stripes are the bilateral, or the DAC. DAC stands for Development Assistance Committee, which is a 50-year-old committee based at the OECD in Paris. That's your bilateral aid. This stripe, which has been much smaller in the early years and then grew and is now still significant, maybe as much as a third, is your multilateral World Bank, IMF, UN system. But then you'll notice this other colored zone, which is today really rather modest, but in a certain period, in the 1970s in particular, was fairly important in official aid. and that was, well, it's sort of the residual, the non-DAC, those who were not members of the Western Club. And much of that was actually Saudi Arabia and Algeria and some other oil-producing countries. That's a brief look then at the three main channels of official aid, and this term ODA, most of you will know that term. It means Official Development Assistance. It is the official term for what we can call foreign aid, and which I will call in my presentation just foreign aid. But ODA is the same thing. Which countries have tended to receive official aid? This is interesting because we are always confronted with the idea that, oh, aid goes to the very poor. It is something for poor countries. This chart illustrates that that is, if not a myth, then exaggerated. Because the poor countries are those in this lowest colored area, receiving now about as much as 25% of total ODA, or total foreign aid from all countries. And there we're talking about the Guinea-Bissaus or the Tanzanias. But a lot more aid has been going to places like, well, Kenya or Honduras. And in this zone, the very wide one, you've had money going, the so-called lower middle income category. That would be Indonesia or China for a long time has been an aid recipient. And then you have other categories less frequently given money in a certain period. Israel, for example, appeared in the foreign aid statistics in the category of the more advanced developing countries. And finally, at the top there's a red stripe, and that describes unallocated, rather general monies for regional programming and so on. So there you have very briefly an overview of where the money has been channeled through, the bilateral and the multilateral, and then these various categories of very poor, not so poor, middle income countries. These are, by the way, not my invention. They're all part of the foreign aid statistical system, and statistics are organized according to these categories, although countries can shift, of course, from one to another. Let's move on. My presentation is a critical presentation. I think that this is a way to stimulate debate and critical thinking. It's therefore, for some, it may come across to you as being hypercritical, very negative on foreign aid. And I want to begin by saying I, in fact, feel there have been a number of important accomplishments, a number of important contributions that foreign aid has made in its history. And here are just four. Western Europe, Belgium, the Netherlands, Spain, Italy, were all recipients of American foreign aid in the early years. Taiwan and South Korea in the 50s and 60s, also important and successful recipients of foreign aid. Foreign aid it wasn't decisive, it wasn't the main thing, but it made important differences. There are also very specific contributions that foreign aid has made in the past, such as the defeat of serious diseases. Smallpox was one where foreign aid made a difference. It wasn't the entire answer, but it made a difference. Also, and this is something that I myself was involved with in the 1980s and 90s, helping channel aid to civil society organizations in South Africa and Namibia. And I believe that foreign aid, we can say, made an important contribution. It wasn't the main thing that made the difference. It was the work of the South African freedom people in the struggle themselves. But foreign aid made a modest difference. So there have been successes in the past, and we can come back to them.